On my son's wedding day, I woke up completely bald. My daughter-in-law had cut my hair while I was sleeping, just so I wouldn't look prettier than her mother. They had no idea I was hiding a $2 million inheritance. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story to the end, and comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. I woke on my son's wedding day and found myself bald. For a moment, lying there in the dim morning light, I thought I was trapped in a nightmare. My hand moved instinctively to my head, expecting the familiar silver waves I'd carefully nurtured for decades. Instead, my palm met bare scalp, rough with stubble. The mirror confirmed my worst fear. 67 years of life, and I'd never looked more vulnerable. Patches of hair clung desperately to my head, like someone had taken scissors, no, worse, while I slept. My reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, unrecognizable. "Bellamy," I whispered, my voice cracking. She'd done this. My daughter-in-law had crept into my room in the dead of night and butchered my hair. The realization struck like a physical blow, doubling me over the bathroom sink. Weeks of salon visits, preparing for today, Marty's wedding day. The highlight treatment, the careful styling, the hope of finally feeling beautiful again after years of fading into the background. All destroyed in one cruel act. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone. "Marty, you need to come over right now." "Mom, it's 6 a.m. The wedding isn't until." "Your wife cut my hair off." The words came out broken, barely audible. Silence stretched between us. When he finally spoke, there was that familiar edge of annoyance I'd come to dread. "What are you talking about?" "She came into my room last night. She cut off all my hair." "Marty, I'm bald." Another pause. "Mom, that sounds, are you sure you didn't have some kind of episode?" "Maybe you should." "I'm not having an episode." The words exploded from me, desperate, raw. "Your wife attacked me in my sleep." An hour later, Marty arrived, Bellamy with him. She walked into my home with the casual confidence of someone who owned the place. Her perfectly styled blonde hair caught the morning sunlight streaming through my kitchen window. "Oh my goodness, pet," she said, covering her mouth in mock horror. "What happened to your hair?" The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed her concern was real. "You know exactly what happened," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Bellamy's eyes widened with exaggerated innocence. "I have no idea what you mean, Marty." "Your mother is accusing me of something terrible." My son looked between us, frustration etched into his face. At 35, Marty had inherited his father's weak chin and my stubborn streak, but none of the backbone needed to stand up to his wife. "Mom, this is crazy." Bellamy was with me all night. We stayed at the hotel, remember? The rehearsal dinner. "She couldn't have come here after you fell asleep." "Why would she do something like that?" His voice carried the patronizing tone he'd adopted over the last 3 years, ever since Bellamy had wrapped her perfectly manicured claws around him. I looked at Bellamy, searching for any crack in her act. "Because your mother-in-law didn't want me looking better than Winfred today." Bellamy gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "Pet, how could you say such a horrible thing?" "I would never." "You told me last week Winfred was nervous about the photos, worried about looking old next to the groom's family." "I was just making conversation." Her voice rose to the perfect pitch of wounded innocence. "I can't believe you'd twist my words like this." Marty stepped closer, arm sliding protectively around her waist. The gesture sent a cold knife through my chest. "Mom, you need to apologize. Right now." "Apologize?" The word slipped out as a whisper. "Marty, look at me. Really look at me." He glanced at my bare scalp, then quickly away. "Maybe you should see a doctor. Hair loss can be a sign of stress." Or, it didn't fall out. It was cut. "You're being paranoid, Mom. And frankly, it's embarrassing." "Embarrassing." The word settled in my stomach like a stone. My own son found my pain embarrassing. Bellamy moved closer to Marty, her voice soft and reasonable. Maybe we should postpone the wedding. Give Pet time to get help. No. The word burst from me with more force than I expected. Don't you dare postpone this wedding because of what you did to me. What I allegedly did, Bellamy corrected, her smile never wavering. I stared at my son, searching for any trace of the little boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. You really believe her over me? I believe what makes sense, Mom. And this doesn't make sense. The silence that followed was heavy, like a slow death. Standing there in my own kitchen, staring at my bald reflection in the toaster, I realized something had shifted irreversibly. I was no longer Marty's mother in any way that truly mattered. I was an inconvenience, a problem to be managed. I need to find something to cover my head, I said at last. Bellamy's smile brightened instantly. Oh, I know a lovely little wig shop downtown. Very affordable. The word affordable hung between us like an insult. From a woman who spent more on monthly highlights than most spend on groceries. As they left, Marty paused at my door. Mom, please don't make a scene today. This day isn't about you. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Once the door closed behind them, I sank into my favorite chair and let the tears come, hot, angry tears that had been building for 3 long years. This day wasn't about me. Apparently, no day was. The cheap wig itched terribly, but it was better than the alternative. I'd driven to 3 different stores before finding something that didn't scream Halloween costume. Still, the synthetic auburn hair felt foreign and obvious beneath the chapel lights. Sitting in the 3rd row, not the first, where the mother of the groom belongs, I watched Wyford hold court in the front row. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her navy dress tailored to perfection. She looked elegant, distinguished. Everything I should have looked like on my son's wedding day. Doesn't Wyford look wonderful? The woman next to me whispered. So refined, she added. I nodded and smiled, the way I'd been trained to do for 3 years. Always smile. Always agree. Never make waves. The truth was, this humiliation had been growing since the day Marty announced his engagement. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I remembered that first dinner when Bellamy brought her parents to meet me. I'd spent 2 days preparing, cleaning my modest home until it sparkled, cooking Marty's favorite meal. When they arrived, Wyford had walked through my living room like she was touring a museum of poverty. How quaint, she'd said, inspecting my handmade curtains. It's so nice when people make do with what they have. Bellamy had laughed, the tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. Mom, not everyone can afford a decorator. Even then, Marty had said nothing. He just sat there eating my pot roast while his future in-laws took inventory of everything I lacked. The secret they didn't know. The secret no one knew. Burning in my chest like a coal. $2 million. That's what my sister Charlotte left me when she died 2 years ago. Charlotte, who never married, never had children, who built a small fortune through careful investments and a thriving accounting practice. Promise me you won't tell anyone right away, she whispered from her hospital bed. Watch how people treat you when they think you have nothing. That's how you'll know who really loves you. I kept that promise. Even when it meant enduring Bellamy's casual cruelties. Even when Marty started treating me like a burden instead of his mother. The wedding march began. I watched my son's face change as Bellamy walked down the aisle. He looked at her like she was everything good in the world. The way he used to look at me when he was small, and I was his whole universe. After his father died, it was just the 2 of us against the world. Marty was 8, lost, angry, and I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Night shifts cleaning office buildings, weekend catering gigs, data entry during the day while he was at school. Every penny went toward his future, piano lessons, summer camps, college funds. You're the best mom in the world, he used to tell me as I crawled into bed exhausted at midnight, only to wake 4 hours later and do it all again. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being the best mom in the world. I'd become the embarrassing mom who worked too much, who couldn't afford the nice things other parents gave their kids, who showed up to school events in whatever uniform came with my latest job. She means well, I heard him tell a friend once during high school. She just doesn't really understand how things work. That stung, but I told myself it was normal teenage embarrassment. He'd grow out of it. He never did. Now, watching him vow to love and cherish Bellamy, I wondered exactly when I'd lost him. Was it when I couldn't afford the senior trip to Europe? When I asked him to get a job to help with college costs? When I chose practical Christmas gifts instead of the flashy gadgets his friends got? Or was it simply that I'd loved him too much, sacrificed too much, until I erased myself completely? The bride looks absolutely radiant. Wyford announced loud enough for several rows to hear. We're so blessed to have such a perfect daughter. The sharp emphasis on perfect daughter was unmistakable, to me and everyone else. At the reception, I was relegated to a table at the back, seated with distant cousins and family friends I barely recognized. Bellamy had insisted on the seating arrangement, saying it would be more comfortable for me to be with people my own age. The people my own age turned out to be lovely. Actually, Margaret, Marty's third-grade teacher, remembered how proud I'd been at every school event. You never missed a thing, she said warmly. Rain or shine, you were always there cheering him on. That was a long time ago, I said, watching Marty dance with his new wife. Not so long, Margaret replied. I remember you working double shifts and still showing up to the science fair. That's real love. But real love, I was learning, didn't guarantee anything. It certainly didn't guarantee respect. When the speeches started, Marty thanked Bellamy's parents effusively. He spoke about Wyford's wisdom and guidance, how welcomed he felt in their family. He mentioned his new father-in-law's business advice and generous spirit. But never once did he mention me. Not a single word about the woman who raised him alone, who sacrificed everything for his happiness, who showed up today wearing a cheap wig because his wife destroyed the one vanity I'd allowed myself. When the applause died down, I excused myself to the bathroom. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, my fake hair looked even more obvious. The woman staring back was a stranger, defeated, invisible, forgotten. But as I adjusted the wig, something else looked back at me. Anger. Pure, clean anger slicing through the hurt like a blade. I had $2 million in a bank account no one knew about. I had choices they couldn't imagine. And for the first time in 3 years, I was ready to start making them. The question wasn't whether my family loved me anymore. It was whether I was finally ready to stop begging them to. The moment came during the cake cutting. I was near the dessert table, trying to fade into the background, when Bellamy's laughter rang out above the crowd. She was holding court near the head table, regaling a group of guests with what sounded like a hilarious story. Oh, you should have seen her this morning, Bellamy said, her voice that same tone that made my skin crawl. Marty's poor mother was convinced I snuck into her house and cut off all her hair while she slept. The group erupted in laughter. Someone gasped. She actually accused you? Can you imagine? Bellamy placed a hand over her heart in mock distress. The poor thing is getting so paranoid. We're really worried about her mental state. I felt the blood drain from my face. She was standing right there, telling wedding guests I was a delusional old woman. Age can be so cruel, Wyford chimed in, shaking her perfectly coiffed head. Some people just can't handle getting older gracefully. Exactly, Bellamy said, dripping with fake sympathy. We've been patient, but honestly, it's becoming a real burden on Marty. He's too sweet to say anything, but I see how much stress his mother's behavior is causing. Margaret, standing near me, gasped softly. That's terrible, she whispered. How can she say such things? But I was frozen, watching my son's new wife systematically destroy my reputation in front of people who'd known me for years. People who watched me raise Marty, who knew the sacrifices I made, were now hearing I was a paranoid burden. We've actually been discussing it, Bellamy continued, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow carried even further. We think it might be time for Pet to consider assisted living. Somewhere she could get the care she needs. Assisted living. The words hit me like a slap. That's probably for the best, someone said. My aunt went through the same thing. Started making wild accusations, forgetting things. It was so hard on the family. I couldn't breathe. This cruel, calculating woman was rewriting my entire existence, turning me into a problem to be solved, a burden to be managed. And where was Marty during this character assassination? Laughing with his groomsman 20 feet away, completely oblivious to his wife destroying his mother's dignity one lie at a time. Margaret touched my arm gently. "Pet, are you all right? You look pale." Before I could answer, Bellamy's voice cut through the air again. "Oh, there she is now, Pet." She waved me over with that dazzling smile that never touched her eyes. "We were just talking about you." My legs felt like water as I walked toward them. The group turned, and I saw it in their faces, pity mixed with discomfort. They looked at me the way you look at someone who's lost their mind. Bellamy was just telling them about my morning. One of the women asked softly, "How are you feeling, dear?" The question was thick with fake concern, the kind you reserve for a confused child. People I'd known for years were now speaking to me as if I were fragile, broken. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "Of course you are," Bellamy said, stepping closer, placing her hand on my arm in a gesture that looked supportive but felt possessive. "We're all here for you, Pet. That's what family's for." The word family tasted bitter on my tongue. "Actually," Bellamy went on, her voice bright and falsely helpful, the tone that made my skin crawl. "Marty and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to step back a little. You know, focus on yourself." The group murmured their agreement. Step back from managing everyone else's lives. As if I'd been some meddling mother-in-law, rather than a woman who'd raised her son alone and only asked for simple respect. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, voice barely steady. Bellamy glanced around, as if fishing for backup. "We think you should find your own path, your own interests. Maybe it's time to stop depending on Marty for your social life and emotional needs." Depending on Marty. The accusation was so backwards, so utterly wrong, I almost laughed. I hadn't depended on Marty for anything in years. If anything, he still called me for advice, when his car broke down, when he and Bellamy fought. "You think I depend on my son?" I asked. "Oh, sweetie," Wyford interrupted, syrupy with false kindness. "It's common for widowed mothers to become overly attached to their children. It's not your fault, but it's not healthy either. Overly attached, to the child I'd raised alone. To the son I'd worked 3 jobs to support. To the boy who used to tell me I was his best friend." "Exactly," Bellamy said, warming to her theme. "Marty needs space to build his own family now. It's not fair to burden him with constant drama and accusations." Burden. The word hit me like a punch. After everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd given up, I was being called a burden by a woman who'd only known my son for 3 years. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, voice stronger now. "I never accused anyone of anything untrue." Bellamy's smile flickered for just a moment, so briefly I almost missed it, then it returned, brighter than ever. "Of course, dear," she said sweetly. "But you have to understand how it sounded. How it made Marty feel, having his new wife accused of something so bizarre." "Bizarre?" I snapped louder than intended. Several heads turned toward me. "Pet," Winifred said firmly. "You're making a scene." Making a scene at my own son's wedding, for defending myself against lies. I looked around at the faces I'd known for decades and saw only discomfort and pity. They believed her. Every carefully crafted word she said. "You're right," I said at last. "I think it is time for me to step back." Bellamy's smile was victorious. "I'm so glad you understand. We all want what's best for everyone." What's best for everyone? Everyone except me, apparently. I excused myself and walked out to the parking lot, my cheap wig slipping slightly in the sticky air. Behind me, the party carried on, laughter and music flowing as if nothing had happened, as if I had never been there at all. Sitting in my car, still wearing the itchy wig that covered my humiliation, I made a decision. Bellamy was right about one thing. It was time for me to step back. But not the way she thought. The lawyer's office smelled of leather and old money. Robert Hartwell had been Charlotte's attorney for 15 years, and when I called him the Monday after the wedding, he fit me in immediately. I need to make some changes to my will, I told him, sitting across from his mahogany desk, dressed in my best, not the mother of the groom outfit I'd carefully chosen but barely worn. Of course, Mrs. Patterson. What kind of changes? I pulled out the manila folder I'd prepared, copies of everything inside. The original will leaving everything to Marty, bank statements showing Charlotte's inheritance, and a new plan I'd drafted in my careful handwriting. I want to remove my son as beneficiary. Robert's eyebrows rose slightly but stayed professional. That's certainly your right. May I ask what prompted this? Let's just say my family has made it clear they don't value my presence. He nodded, making notes. And who would you like to name as your new beneficiary? I'd thought about this for 3 sleepless nights. I want to set up a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd worked as a nurse's aide for 12 years, one of 3 jobs while raising Marty. It had been honest work, and I always regretted not having the time or money to get my RN degree. That's a lovely legacy, Robert said. We can absolutely arrange that. Will there be any provisions for family members? None. He made another note. Mrs. Patterson, may I ask if this decision is being made under any duress? Feeling pressured by anyone? I almost laughed. If anything, I was finally free. No duress. Just clarity. The next step was harder. I drove to Riverside Properties, where Janet Morrison had worked for 20 years. Janet had sold me my house when Marty was 10, and I trusted her discretion. Pet, Janet greeted me warmly as I walked in. How was the wedding? I heard it was beautiful. Beautiful. Yes, I supposed it had been, if you ignored the character assassination and public humiliation. It was lovely, I said, though it felt hollow. Janet, I need to talk to you about selling my house. Her smile faltered. Selling? But you love that house. You put so much work into it. I had loved it. Every weekend for 15 years, I poured my free time into that small 2-bedroom home, the garden I'd cultivated, the kitchen I renovated penny by penny, the living room where Marty did his homework while I worked night shifts filling out paperwork at the kitchen table. I'm ready for a change, I said simply. Well, the market's good right now. Are you looking to downsize? There are some lovely senior communities. Actually, I'm thinking of moving out of state. Janet blinked, surprised. Out of state? Where? Oregon. My cousin lives in Portland. She's been asking me to visit for years. It was true. Rebecca was my mother's sister's daughter, and we'd stayed in touch through Christmas cards and occasional phone calls. When I called her yesterday, she'd been thrilled. You should come for an extended visit, Rebecca said. I have a wonderful community here, active seniors, book clubs, hiking groups. You'd love it. I might need to make it permanent, I told her. Even better. I have a guest room that's yours as long as you need it. Janet was still staring at me. Pet, this seems very sudden. Are you sure you're not rushing into this? Maybe you should talk to Marty first. Marty made it clear at his wedding that he thought I needed to find my own path and stop depending on him. I'm simply taking his advice, I said. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved with quiet efficiency. I donated most of my furniture to charity, keeping only the pieces that held real meaning. My mother's china, Charlotte's jewelry, the photo albums documenting Marty's childhood. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not Marty, not the neighbors, not the women in my book club. I simply went about my business, tying up loose ends with the same methodical precision I'd learned from managing crisis after crisis on my own. The hardest part was the storage unit. I rented a small space across town and filled it with boxes of Marty's childhood memories, report cards, art projects, the Mother's Day cards he'd made me in elementary school with construction paper and crayons. "You're the best mom ever," one card read in his 6-year-old handwriting. "I love you to the moon and back." I packed it all away carefully, just in case someday he wanted to remember who I used to be to him. The phone call started 2 weeks after the wedding. First, it was Marty checking in, his voice carrying that slightly guilty tone that meant Bellamy had probably made a comment about him neglecting his mother. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to see how you're doing." "I'm fine, sweetheart. How's married life?" "Great. Bellamy's amazing. We're really happy." "I'm glad. Are you doing anything fun? Getting out at all?" The question was loaded with the subtext of our last conversation. "Are you making your own life like Bellamy suggested?" "Actually, yes," I said. "I've been quite busy." "Oh, good. What kind of stuff?" "Just taking care of some things I'd been putting off." It wasn't a lie. I had been putting off living my own life for decades. The second call came when my house went on the market. Janet must have mentioned it to someone because Marty's voice was sharp with confusion. "Mom, what's this about you selling the house?" "Janet Morrison called Bellamy and said you'd listed it." "I'm making some changes," I said calmly. "What kind of changes?" "You didn't say anything about selling." "You're right. I didn't mention it. I'm learning to make my own decisions without burdening you with the details." There was a pause, heavy with the word burden. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Bellamy made it quite clear at your wedding that I needed to stop depending on you and find my own path." "I'm doing exactly that." "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I interrupted gently. I heard her clearly, and she was right. It's time for me to build my own life. But selling the house seems extreme. "Where are you going to live?" "I have options." There was a pause, longer this time. "Mom, you're worrying me. This doesn't sound like you." He was right. This wasn't like me. The old me would have asked his permission, sought his approval, made sure any change in my life fit neatly into his schedule. But the old me had also believed that love and sacrifice would be met with respect and consideration. The old me had been wrong about a lot of things. "I'm fine, Marty." Better than fine, actually. I'm excited about this new chapter. New chapter? "Mom, what aren't you telling me?" "Everything," I thought. "I'm not telling you that your wife is cruel and manipulative. I'm not telling you your wedding was the most humiliating day of my life. I'm not telling you that I have enough money to disappear forever if I choose. I'm not telling you anything because you don't need to be burdened with managing my life," I said instead. "Isn't that what you wanted?" The call ended with promises to talk soon. But I could hear the confusion in his voice. Good. Let him wonder. Let him question whether he really knows his mother at all. Because the truth was, I was only just beginning to know myself. They showed up on a Thursday morning. 3 weeks after I'd put the house on the market, I was in the kitchen, carefully packing my mother's china into padded boxes when I heard Marty's key in the front door. He still had a key. Of course he did. I'd given it to him when he turned 16. And somehow, it never occurred to me to ask for it back, even after he made it clear I was no longer a priority in his life. "Mom," he called. "We need to talk." My stomach tightened as I heard Bellamy's voice float down the hallway. "Pet, where are you?" I dried my hands on the dish towel and walked into the living room where they stood among my packed boxes like invaders surveying conquered territory. Bellamy was dressed in her usual perfection, a cream sweater probably worth more than my monthly groceries, designer jeans, and those ridiculous boots she flaunted on social media. "Hello, Marty." "Bellamy." I kept my voice neutral. What brings you by? What brings us by? Marty gestured at the boxes stacked around the room. Mom, this is insane. You can't just sell your house and disappear without talking to us. I'm not disappearing. I'm moving. Where? Bellamy stepped forward, her voice coated in that sickly sweet concern that made my skin crawl. We're worried about you, pet. This kind of impulsive behavior isn't like you. Impulsive? As if I hadn't spent 3 weeks carefully planning every detail. I'm moving to Portland to be near my cousin Rebecca. Marty frowned. Rebecca? I barely remember her. You haven't talked to her in years. We've stayed in touch more than you know. But why Portland? Bellamy asked. It's so far away. And with your episodes? Don't you think you should stay closer to family? Episodes? There it was again, her word to paint me unstable, unreliable. I don't have episodes, Bellamy. Well, no, of course not, she said quickly. I just meant, you know, the confusion at the wedding, the accusations. Marty shifted uncomfortably. Mom, about that. About what? I asked. About your wife cutting my hair, or about her telling everyone at your reception that I was losing my mind. Bellamy's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flash of panic in her eyes. I never said you were losing your mind. I was concerned about you, that's all. You told a group of wedding guests I needed assisted living. That's not. She stopped and collected herself. I think you misunderstood the conversation. I understand perfectly. I moved to the mantelpiece and picked up a framed photo of Marty's college graduation. I understand that you see me as a problem to be managed, a burden on your marriage, Mom. That's not true, Marty said. But his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I turned to face them both. When was the last time you called me just to talk, Marty? Not because you needed something. Not because Bellamy reminded you to check on your poor, lonely mother. But because you actually wanted to hear my voice. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Exactly. I set the photo in a box. You've made it clear I'm no longer welcome in your life as anything more than an obligation. So I'm removing that obligation. You're being dramatic, Bellamy said, voice sharpening. We never said you weren't welcome. You told me to find my own path and stop depending on Marty. I'm doing exactly that. I meant you should find hobbies. Bellamy's composure was starting to crack. Join a book club, take up gardening, make some friends your own age. I didn't mean for you to run off to another state like some runaway teenager. I'm 67 years old, Bellamy. I don't need your permission to make decisions about my own life. Marty stepped between us. Okay. Let's all just calm down. Mom, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. We don't want you to move away. We want you to be part of our family. What family? The words were harsher than I'd meant. The family that seats me in the back row at your wedding. The family that doesn't mention me in the groom's speech. The family that thinks I'm so unstable I'd cut my own hair and blame someone else for it. I never said I thought you cut your own hair, Marty said. Weakly, I shot back. You didn't have to say it. You believed her without question. You took her side over mine without even considering that your mother might be telling the truth. Bellamy crossed her arms. Because your story didn't make sense, pet. Why would I do something so horrible? Because you wanted to make sure you didn't look better than your mother in the wedding photos. That's ridiculous. Is it? You told me yourself that Wyford was nervous about looking old next to the groom's family. I was making conversation. No, I said quietly. You were gathering intelligence. Finding out what insecurities you could exploit. The silence that followed was deafening. Marty looked between us like a referee in a tennis match, his face pale with confusion. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Bellamy said finally. These paranoid accusations. It's not healthy, pet. You know what's not healthy? I set down the box I was holding and faced her directly. 35 years of putting my son's needs before my own, only to be treated like an embarrassment at his wedding. 35 years of working multiple jobs, sacrificing everything so he could have opportunities one never had, only to be told I'm a burden on his new marriage. Mom, Marty said softly. 35 years of love and devotion, I continued, my voice growing stronger, only to learn it means nothing compared to 3 years of manipulation from a woman who sees me as competition for her husband's attention. I don't see you as competition, Bellamy said, but her voice was sharp, defensive. Don't you? Then why did you feel the need to ruin my appearance on your wedding day? Why humiliate me in front of people I've known for decades? Why make sure everyone saw me as the crazy mother-in-law instead of the woman who raised the man you claimed to love? Bellamy's mask was slipping completely now. Because you are the crazy mother-in-law. Possessive, jealous. You can't stand that Marty doesn't need you anymore. The truth hung between us like a live wire. There it is, I said softly. Finally, the real Bellamy. Marty stared at his wife in shock. Bellamy? What the hell? Oh, don't act surprised, she snapped. You complain about her all the time. How she calls too much. How she still treats you like you're 12. How she makes everything about herself. I never said you said all of that. Every time she annoys you, you come home and vent to me. You're just too much of a coward to say it to her face. Something inside me broke. Not my heart, that had been cracking for years, but something deeper. The last thread connecting me to the son I'd raised. The boy who used to defend me against the world. I see, I said quietly. Marty's face crumpled. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I picked up another box, surprised at how steady my hands were. And you know what? You're right. I have been possessive. I have been jealous. Because for 35 years, you were the center of my universe. And I couldn't accept that I wasn't the center of yours anymore. I looked at them both, my son, unable to meet my eyes, and his wife, practically vibrating with vindicated rage. But I accept it now. So here's what's going to happen. I'm moving to Portland next week. I'm starting a new life with people who actually want me around. And you too can build your perfect little family without the burden of having to deal with me. Mom, please, Marty said. We can work this out. No, we can't, I replied. Because this isn't a misunderstanding, Marty. This is who you've become. And I finally understand that no amount of love from me is going to change that. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should leave now. They stood frozen for a long moment. Then Bellamy grabbed Marty's arm and pulled him toward the door. Fine, she said, but don't expect us to come running when you realize you've made a mistake. After they left, I sat among my packed boxes and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, relief. The worst had happened. The pretending was over. And I was still breathing. In fact, for the first time in decades, I felt like I could breathe freely. 6 months after leaving everything behind, I stood in my new kitchen in Portland, watching rain paint patterns on the window while fresh coffee brewed. My hair had grown back silver and soft, styled exactly how I wanted it. No one had touched it but my new hairdresser, a lovely woman named Sarah, who never asked intrusive questions about my past. Rebecca had been right about this community. Within a month, I'd joined a hiking group for seniors, a book club that met at the local coffee shop, and a volunteer program at the Children's Hospital. For the first time in my adult life, I was living for myself. The letter from Marty sat unopened on my counter. It had arrived yesterday, forwarded from my old address. His third attempt to reach me since I left. The first 2 had been phone calls I let go to voicemail. Messages full of confusion and hurt, ones I'd listened to once, then deleted. I wasn't ready before. Today, I thought maybe I was. Dear Mom. It began in his familiar handwriting. I've been trying to reach you for months. I know you're angry, and I know we hurt you. I'm writing because I need you to know that Bellamy and I are having problems. I set the letter down and poured my coffee, adding the Real cream I'd never allowed myself when money was tight. Through the window, I saw Mrs. Chen next door tending her garden. She'd invited me for dinner tomorrow night just because she enjoyed my company. I picked up the letter again. She's been different since you left. Colder, more controlling. Yesterday, she told me I needed to choose between having a relationship with you and staying married to her. She said if I contacted you, she'd know I was choosing you over her. I almost smiled. Bellamy's mask was finally slipping for Marty, too. I keep thinking about what she said that day at your house, about me complaining about you. The truth is, I did say those things when I was frustrated or tired. I would vent to her about things that seemed annoying at the time. But I never meant for her to use those conversations as ammunition against you. Too little, too late, I thought. But I kept reading. I'd been thinking about when I was a kid, after Dad died. Do you remember that night when I was afraid there was a monster under my bed? You didn't just tell me there was nothing there. You got a flashlight, and we searched the whole room together. Then you made me a monster spray with water and lavender, and you said, as long as I had that, no monster could hurt me. I remembered. He'd been 8 years old, so brave, trying not to cry while we searched every corner of his room. I realized something, Mom. You were my monster spray for 18 years. Every time the world felt scary or unfair, you made it safe again. And instead of being grateful, I grew up resenting you for it. I thought it meant I was weak, that I needed protecting. I didn't understand it meant I was loved. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. But I kept reading. Bellamy never had that. Her parents were cold, distant. She doesn't understand what we had, so she saw it as something unhealthy. And I was stupid enough to believe her. I walked to the living room and sat in my new favorite chair. A soft blue recliner I'd bought because I liked it, not because it matched anything else. The afternoon light was fading, and I could hear Rebecca in her garden next door, humming while she worked. I miss you, Mom. Not just because things are falling apart with Bellamy, but because I finally understand what I lost when I chose to believe her over you. I lost the one person who loved me unconditionally. The one person who always saw the best in me, even when I didn't deserve it. The phone rang, interrupting my reading. Rebecca's name lit up my caller ID. Pet, dear, are you free for dinner tonight instead of tomorrow? My nephew is visiting from Seattle, and I thought you might enjoy meeting him. He's a widower, around your age, loves to read. I smiled. Since I arrived, Rebecca had been determined to introduce me to every eligible man she could find. She was convinced that romance was the missing piece to my new life. But after decades of defining myself by others' expectations, I was finally savoring the freedom of living for myself alone. That sounds lovely, I said, surprising even myself. What time? After we hung up, I turned back to Marty's letter. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I'm asking anyway because I can't stand the thought of living the rest of my life without my mother. I folded the letter carefully and set it aside. Then I walked to my desk and pulled out some cream-colored stationery, my new address embossed at the top. Dear Marty. Thank you for your letter. It means more than you know to hear you acknowledge the mistakes that were made. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I need you to understand something. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because loving you was destroying me. For too many years, I made you the center of my universe while I disappeared into the background. That wasn't healthy, for either of us. The words flowed easier than I expected. I built a new life here. I have friends who value me, activities that bring me joy, and for the first time in decades, I'm living for myself. I won't give that up, even for you. I thought about mentioning the inheritance that made this possible, but some secrets are better kept. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it will have to be on different terms. I won't be the mother who sacrifices everything for her child's happiness. I won't be the grandmother who babysits whenever you need a break, or the emergency contact who drops everything when you call. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the evening light bathed everything in gold. But if you want a mother who's found her own strength, who can offer love without losing herself, then perhaps we can find a way forward. I sealed the letter and placed it by my purse to mail tomorrow. Then I got ready for dinner with Rebecca and her nephew. At the restaurant, I found myself across from David, a retired teacher with kind eyes and an easy laugh. He shared stories about his students, asked thoughtful questions about my move to Portland, and never once made me feel like I needed to justify my choices. Rebecca told me you're quite the hiker, he said over dessert. I've been looking for someone to explore some tougher trails with. Most of my friends think I'm too old for adventure. I'd like that, I said, meaning every word. I'm just discovering I'm braver than I thought. Walking home later, I felt a lightness I hadn't known since I was young. The weight of other people's expectations, needs, and disappointments, all of it was gone. My phone buzzed with a message. For a moment, I thought it was Marty, but it was Sarah from the hiking group. Trail conditions are perfect for tomorrow's hike. Can't wait to see you there. I typed back quickly. Wouldn't miss it for the world. And I meant it. This world I'd built, this life I'd claimed, I wouldn't miss a moment. Back in my quiet house, I made a cup of tea and settled into my blue chair, gazing out at the city lights. Somewhere across the country, Marty was probably reading my letter, trying to understand the woman who had replaced the mother he thought he knew. I hoped he'd understand eventually. I hoped he'd find the courage to build a life based on his own choices, not someone else's manipulations. But whether he did or not, I would be fine. For the first time in my life, I was enough for myself. And that, I realized, was the most powerful discovery of all. Now, I'm curious about you, the one listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And while you're here, I'm leaving 2 other channel favorites on the final screen, stories that will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching all the way through.